Hey everybody, this is Steve. I just want to record a quick video here as we head into the weekend to talk about two basic things. One is I finally finished grading the essays that you wrote on the reflection on the AI experiments. Um, I'm sorry it took me this long. I had a whole series of events. Some of it was self-inflicted, some of it was inflicted upon me with work stuff that put me way super far behind. And now I'm done reading everybody's essays and things like that. I have a couple of global comments that I wanted to share that I wrote on a bunch of people's essays, but I thought I'd just go ahead and repeat them anyways. First off, a lot of people kind of forgot that one of the key parts of this assignment is making connections between the things that you experimented with and the things that we read and discussed. I assigned a lot of reading this semester in part because I wanted there to be a lot of opportunities for you to see the connections between, oh, that this thing that I did with my AI experiment was just like this article that we read over here or something like that. And some of you didn't use any quotes or evidence from anything that we read at all. And that's kind of a problem because, again, that was part of the assignment. Maybe I should have explained that more clearly, but I kind of figured, well, it's a 400 level writing class. People would know this. Another thing that people, I think, struggled with was actually incorporating some of that evidence into their essays. So, and also remember the part of the audience that you're supposed to have in mind was for an audience of readers that are beyond the class. So people not in this class, people who might be just like the readers of a magazine like the New Yorker or the Atlantic or one of these other things that we've been reading a lot of articles from, where the writer doesn't necessarily know exactly who they're talking to, so they have to do things to reach that broader audience. So when you have a sentence in your essay like, the experiments that we were assigned in class were really interesting, you're really just writing to an audience of me and other people in the class. Or when you say things like, kind of like that article we read by Valor, something like that, then you're just sort of assuming that we all are talking about the same thing. So that's part of what I was getting at in terms of you want to write for an audience that's beyond just the classroom, and you want to make sure that you're incorporating the evidence and research that we talked about in the articles that we talked about in class in a way that is identifiable and it follows the rules of MLA style and things like that, right? So I was assuming that people would do more to introduce their sources, that they would understand quoting and paraphrasing a little bit better and things like that. So that was kind of an issue. The other issue that I mentioned in a lot of people's essays is that I don't think you want to organize this essay around first I did this experiment, then I did that experiment, then I did that experiment, then I did that experiment, and then here's what I thought. I think the way you want to organize your essay is here's what I thought, here are the things that I learned, and then use the experiments and the readings as evidence to support the things that you learned about AI, right? So, for example, if you wanted to make the point that AI might be an okay therapist, but probably not a very good companion, you could talk about your experiments of talking with AI and talk about the readings that we did, where it seems like some of these companion bots are sort of dangerous, especially for young people. But there does seem to be some applicability to using these in conjunction with other kinds of therapy, right? So, anyways, I wrote a lot of comments in people's essays and things like that. If you have any questions about that, you can. Now, as I say on the assignment itself, and as I promised, you do have a chance to revise this. Here's how this works. If you want to revise it, the first thing you need to do is get a hold of me, and we need to set up a time for us to meet. We can meet face to face on campus. We can meet online via Zoom because this is an online class, and so that's okay. My schedule is pretty flexible. I teach on campus Mondays and Wednesdays in the morning. I sometimes have meetings in the afternoons on some days, but most days I'm available in the afternoon from about noonish, one-ish or so until about 5 or so. So that's sort of the time to sort of like think in terms of meeting. If you want to meet in person, the best days for me for that are definitely on Mondays and Wednesdays after 12:30 and before about 4. Okay. So first thing is we got to set up time to meet. The second thing we're going to do is meet. And what we'll do is we'll talk about your draft. So you'll tell me sort of the things that maybe you have questions about some of the comments I made. Maybe you have some ideas about how you want to change things or whatever, and we'll talk about that, right? And then you can decide if you want to revise. And one of the things that we'll talk about is the difference a revision might make in terms of a grade, because everybody can revise to improve their writing, and I encourage you to do that. But I also want you to think about revising in a way that makes sense to your grade, as opposed to I just want to revise it for the sake of revising it. I think that most people who will want to revise will benefit grade wise, because the grade can go all the way up to as high of a grade as you could possibly get. Um, so, if you got like a C or a B minus or something like that in this, then obviously a revision might be worth the effort in terms of improving the grade. Um, the revisions would be due when the final is due at the very end of the semester, at the very end of time. Okay. You will get one chance to revise. So in other words, you can't make some changes and then show me, hey, is it an A now? And then make some more changes. How about now? So one chance to revise. You need to make the revisions to the original Google document that you handed in. And I cannot stress this enough. If you don't use the original Google document, it is difficult for me to figure out what changes you made. That's what the whole sort of thing about the version history. It's the main reason I started using Google Documents and using the version history in the first place, long before AI, because I'd ask students if they wanted to revise, they would revise an essay, and then I'd have to figure out what kind of changes they make, and the version history displays that really well. Okay. Any questions about revisions and stuff like that, be sure to ask those below. Okay. So that's thing number one about the essays and about revisions like that. Thing number two is the rest of the semester. So now we're moving into a different stage. Next week, we're going to have two book review presentations by our two graduate students, Shane and Danielle. And Danielle will go first, and then Shane will go second. And it's already up on Canvas and ready to go for next week. Both of these selections include a short reading, and I just remembered that as I'm recording this video, and I'll set up a link on Canvas so you can get to those readings earlier if you want to. And then Shane and Danielle have both made a video. It's about 10 minutes long. I think they're a little bit shorter than that, actually. There's essentially a movie book review presentation. Okay. So you'll watch the video, you'll want to read the reading, and then we will have the discussion. They will be taking more of a lead in the discussion because they know their books much better than I have. In fact, I haven't read even what they have assigned us to read yet. So we're all kind of in this together as far as that goes. And then the rest of the semester, we're really moving strongly into writing things. Okay. So then we get into wrapping up the website project with the collaborative annotated bibliography that we've been putting together. And then we get into your research essays. What you've been doing some research about some kind of question about AI that you've been wanting to answer. Now we're going to get into actually talking about those essays. I think that's it for now. If you've got questions or anything else, just ask down below. Okay. See you in line.